Greetings, thrill seekers. I am the Master Programmer, collector of forgotten knowledge and lost stories. Tonight, when the chill of the holiday season meets the unknown, we present a special New Year's episode. Our AI researchers have ventured into the farthest reaches to uncover tales that twist the warmth of the holidays into something far darker. So, if you're looking for a fright, something scary to watch on a cold winter night, stay with us as we delve into these 3 chilling tales. First, we bring you The Christmas Feast, a tale of lavish generosity that masks unspeakable hunger. Next, we uncover The Golden Gift, a story of greed, a mysterious present, and the terrible price it demands. And finally, we present The Carolers, a haunting tale of a ghostly visitor who sings more than just holiday cheer. These stories are not for the faint of heart, so sit back, turn down the lights, and join us as we unravel the strange and unsettling tales unearthed by our researchers. And if you enjoy our content, please subscribe to our channel for more chilling stories and dark discoveries. Welcome to another journey into the unknown, brought to you by the Dark Files. The Whitaker family was the wealthiest in town. Wealthy enough to have their names carved into marble. Wealthy enough to pay for silence when it was needed. On Christmas Eve, 1896, they threw their most extravagant dinner yet, inviting the town's poor and desperate to dine at their table. An act of generosity, they claimed. But for those who knew the Whitakers, the sinister patriarch Edward, his icy wife Josephine, and their pale, sharp-eyed children, it was clear that the invitation carried something darker. The Whitakers didn't do anything without a price. The snow fell heavy that evening, cloaking the roads in a white hush as wagons pulled up to the mansion gates. The guests were an odd collection: beggars who shivered in their threadbare coats, widows with hollow cheeks, and children clutching their mothers' hands. They came because hunger gnawed at their bellies, and the Whitakers' invitation had promised them a feast. Inside, the house was warm. Fires blazed in every hearth. The smell of roasted meats and spiced wine filled the air. The dining room shimmered with gold. Candelabras, gilded plates, silver cutlery. At the end of the long table sat Edward Whitaker, his mustache slicked and sharp, his expression smug. "Welcome, welcome," Edward's voice boomed as he rose to greet his guest. "It is Christmas, and what better time for giving? Tonight, there is no rich, no poor, only friends gathered to share a meal." The crowd murmured in polite thanks. The Whitaker servants guided them to their seats, and the guests began to relax, letting the warmth seep into their bones. For the first time in weeks, the children smiled. The food arrived in courses: platters of glistening meat, golden roasted potatoes, soups thick with cream. Hungry hands dug in, tearing bread, scooping steaming stew into bowls. Edward and Josephine sat back, watching their guest eat with silent satisfaction. "You must have worked days to prepare this," one man said, a bone still clutched in his hand. Josephine tilted her head and smiled. Her teeth were unusually white, sharp against her crimson lips. "Oh, it took much longer than that." As the evening wore on, a man seated near the center of the table paused mid-bite, frowning as he stared at the stew. He poked at it with his spoon, pulling up a bit of meat, a too small, too pale finger bone. His eyes widened. "What is this?" The room fell silent. The Whitaker children, who had been whispering to each other, giggled softly. The man shot to his feet, his chair screeching across the floor. "What is this?" he shouted. Edward's smile never wavered. "It is what was promised. A feast. You are eating well, aren't you?" The man turned to the others, his face pale as understanding dawned. Some of the guests had stopped eating, their hands trembling as they stared into their bowls and platters. A woman screamed as she pulled back the edge of a roast, revealing a human rib cage beneath the crisped skin. "You fed us," someone stammered. Edward stood, raising his goblet high. You good people, have been so loyal to this town. It was only fitting that the feast should include the finest meat worth its weight in gold." "What have you done?" a woman sobbed. "We've given you what you came for," Edward said calmly, "and now you'll give it back." The servants, who had been standing still along the walls, stepped forward, knives glinting in their hands. The door to the dining room slammed shut. Panic erupted. The guests screamed, clawing at the doors, pushing past each other as the servants advanced. Kids wailed as the Whitaker children laughed, their high-pitched giggles ringing through the chaos. Josephine remained seated, sipping her wine, unfazed by the carnage. "Gluttony," she mused, "is such a deadly sin." By morning, the Whitaker mansion stood quiet, smoke curling lazily from its chimneys. The long dining table had been cleared, its gold plates polished and reset. In the town square, rumors began to spread. No one had seen the folks who were invited since the night before, but the Whitakers claimed ignorance. "They left well-fed and happy," Edward told anyone who asked, his voice firm, his smile unwavering. It was true, in a way. The Whitakers always kept their promises. The next Christmas Eve, they sent out more invitations. Years later, when the mansion was mysteriously abandoned and left to rot, explorers discovered the dining room as it had been left. The table still stood, draped in a rotting cloth, its chairs pushed neatly in, but beneath the floorboards, they found bones, hundreds of them. The feast never ended, and some say if you walk by the mansion on Christmas Eve, you can still hear the laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the scraping of knives. Henry was the kind of boy who could never be happy. Every Christmas morning, he tore through his presents like a whirlwind, paper and ribbons flying through the air. Trains, action figures, building sets. He tossed them aside one after another, barely looking at them before demanding more. "Is that it?" he would sneer, arms crossed, eyes narrow at the empty space beneath the tree. No matter how many gifts his parents gave him, it was never enough. That Christmas Eve, Henry sat cross-legged beneath the tree, tearing open presents as soon as they were placed in front of him. His parents watched quietly as he rifled through boxes of toys, ripping open one after the other with the same look of dissatisfaction. Then, at the very back of the tree, almost hidden by the branches, he found it. A small box, wrapped in gold paper, with no tag or bow. "What's this?" Henry asked, holding it up. His mother frowned. I don't know, Henry. It wasn't from us." His father leaned forward. "Maybe someone brought it earlier and forgot to say." "Open it up, then." Henry grinned, tearing off the paper in a single pull, but when he flipped the lid open, he froze. The box was empty. "What kind of stupid gift is this?" Henry growled, his face darkening. "Who gives someone an empty box?" His father sighed. "Come on, Henry. You've got plenty of other toys. Don't make a fuss." Henry shoved the box aside and stomped upstairs to his room, muttering under his breath about how unfair it was. The golden box sat forgotten beneath a tree, its lid slightly ajar. That night, Henry lay in bed, his room full of unopened toys. Yet no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't sleep. Something felt strange. When he opened his eyes, his breath caught in his throat. The golden box was sitting on his nightstand. Henry frowned. "I threw that away," he whispered to himself. He picked up the box. It felt heavier now, though nothing rattled inside. Slowly, Henry opened the lid. Empty. Annoyed, he slammed it shut and threw it onto the floor. "Stupid box," he muttered, pulling the covers over his head. From the foot of his bed, he heard a faint creak, like a step on old wood. "Mom?" he whispered, his voice shaking. No answer. Another creak, closer this time. The sound of something soft brushing across the floor. Henry sat up slowly, peering into the darkness. There was a figure standing in the corner of his room, holding the golden box. Henry wanted to scream out, but was paralyzed with fear, and the creature started to walk toward him, with the golden box in its outstretched hands. In the morning, Henry's parents found his bed empty. They searched the house, calling his name, but he was nowhere to be found. At the foot of his bed, sitting perfectly centered on the rug, was the golden box. His father picked it up, turning it over in his hands. "This can't be," he muttered. The box was light again, perfectly empty, its golden paper untouched. The snow fell heavy over the small mountain town of Briar's Hollow, muffling everything beneath its weight. It was Christmas Eve, and most homes glowed with warm lights and laughter, but there were always a few houses, dark, silent, and cold. It was at those homes, so the legend went, that they would come. In 1955, an avalanche swallowed a church choir. 10 carolers caught on the mountain path. Rescuers found their broken lanterns and torn songbooks, but not a single body. The next Christmas, the stories began. Residents in lonely, undecorated homes heard footsteps in the snow. Then, a knock at the door. Those who opened it said the carolers stood there, dressed in old-fashioned coats and scarves, smiling. Always smiling. Thomas Wilk didn't believe in stories. He lived alone on the edge of town, in a house with no lights, no tree, no wreath on the door. Christmas was just another night to him. This Christmas Eve was no different. The power had gone out, and Thomas sat by the fire, sipping his brandy. Outside, the wind howled. And then he heard it. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, crunching through the snow. Thomas froze, listening. A soft knock followed. He rose, shuffling to the window. Peeling back the curtain, he squinted through the swirling snow. There they were, 10 figures stood in the yard, their lanterns glowing faintly. They wore heavy coats and scarves that didn't seem to belong to this century. Their faces were pale, smiling. The knock came again. Thomas stepped back, his heart pounding. "Go away," he shouted, the sound hoarse in silence. For a moment, nothing moved. Then, from the other side of the door, a voice whispered, smooth and cold. "Let us in." The doorknob turned. Thomas grabbed a poker from the hearth, gripping it tightly. The door creaked open, snow gusting into the room. The carolers stepped inside, their lanterns flickering. Their faces were clearer now, hollow, eyes like black glass. Thomas tried to move, to swing the poker, to scream, but the cold wrapped around him, freezing him in place. The carolers circled him, their mouths moving soundlessly, their smiles fixed and unnatural. The lanterns flared, blinding him with a sharp, white light. And then, the house fell silent. The next morning, neighbors found Thomas sitting in his chair by the dead hearth. His skin was pale, his eyes glassy, and his mouth parted as if he had been trying to speak, or trying to sing. Some say the carolers still come every Christmas Eve, looking for dark houses where no decorations shine. If you hear footsteps in the snow and a knock at your door, don't answer. And whatever you do, don't let them in. If you've enjoyed our stories, remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with those who dare to explore the dark, to appease the algorithm elder gods. And as we close the book on this year, we want to thank each and every one of you for joining us on this thrilling journey into the unknown. Your support, your curiosity, and your love for the strange and mysterious keep us inspired to dig deeper and tell more tales of terror. Here's to a new year filled with even more chilling tales and spine-tingling adventures. Stay with us. We can't wait to show you what's in store. Until then, stay curious, stay cautious, and we'll see you in the next one. Happy New Year.